So we can. Okay, so let's start. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening from where you are joining us from. On behalf of the Cooperative Development Foundation of Canada, CDF Canada, in partnership with the Irish League of Credit Unions, ILCOF, and the African Confederation of Cooperatives and Savings Credit Associations, ACOSA, we are the implementing partners and the grant recipients, and that we extend our warm greeting to all of you. It's really a pleasant afternoon here in Nairobi, and I hope you're all well and keeping safe. So I will start by welcoming you once again to this workshop, the IRFITCO Workshop, a project that was funded by the International Fund for Agricultural Development, IFAD. IRFITCO in full simply means improving rural financial inclusion through financial cooperatives projects. So the objective of this workshop today is to really highlight the progress and the achievements made over the 4-year period of its implementation in 3 countries in Africa, that is Tanzania, Malawi, and Ethiopia. My name is Grace Watsira. I'm head of programs at Africa Confederation of Cooperative Savings and Credit Association. And I'm delighted and really honored to be your moderator for the day. So just quick ground rules. This is going to be a 2-hour session, which will be recorded and later made available on CDF's YouTube channel. So feel free to look out for it for your future reference. I also encourage us to mute our gadgets and minimize any background movement or noise if you're not speaking, so as to just enhance quality of the recording. And finally, please let's interact as much as possible. We encourage that your comments and questions are posted via the chat box. And is in progress. Just hold on to those. We have a space where we'll address all the questions and share your comments as well. So before I invite our first speaker, may I take this opportunity to welcome and recognize the presence of IFAD country directors and their representatives present today. I also would wish to welcome all the IFAD staff present, both from the Eastern and the Southern Africa Division, all the Chief Executives Officers, starting with CDF Canada, the Irish League of Credit Unions Foundation, ILCOF, ACOSCA, MUSCO, that's Malawi Union of Savings and Credit Cooperatives, South and Credit Cooperative Union, and the Federal Cooperative Agency in Ethiopia, and really all participating staff from all these organizations. We are really happy and honored to have you today. As well, the Global Affairs Canada staff present, GAC and Fertilizer Canada representatives, and everyone else joining us from the wider cooperative sector. So with that, please allow me to introduce to you our first speaker of the day, Jane Kulo, who will be taking us through the general overview of the project. So Jane, as a way of introduction, is currently the manager of programs with CDF Canada and has been managing IFAD-funded projects with CDF under the name Profira, which simply means Project for Financial Inclusion in Rural Areas. She's currently, or rather was the manager of the Improving Rural Financial Inclusion through Financial Cooperatives, the project that is in subject today. So Jen, besides that, also oversees the implementation of Global Affairs Canada funded projects, including the 4R Stewardship Project, the Voice Project for Women and Girls, and many others. She joined CDF in 2018 and is a fully certified project management professional. May I welcome you, Jen? Please, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Grace, for that elaborate introduction. And I must thank you for breaking down the acronyms. I think that makes the rest of our work very easy for the rest of the speakers. Thank you very much. Good morning, good evening, everyone, depending on where you are. Welcome to this event. So I will go right into the introductory part of the project. And as you have heard, IRFITCO stands for Rural Financial Inclusion through Financial Cooperatives. And it ran between March 2017 to March 2021. And the project target countries were Malawi, Ethiopia, and Tanzania. Next slide, please. Next slide. Yeah, so the implementation modalities of the project, the total program costed about 3.28 million, of which 2.6 million was financed by a grant from IFAD and about 620,000 being financed by CDF, which is the Cooperative Development Foundation of Canada, ILCAF, and ACOSCA, in cash and in kind. So CDF has been the grant recipient and the lead partner of the consortium, did supervision with ILCAF, while ACOSCA handled continental learning, reaching over 20 African countries. So the three program coordinators managed in-country aspects of the project implementation in the countries of operation, that is Ethiopia, Malawi, and Tanzania. The three partners formed the steering committee with CDF as the lead consultant and advisor. And generally on the project, there are no major changes from the original project design, apart from a few, towards a few months of this year, 2021, where contextual changes affected the project implementation, and notably the COVID-19 effects in all the three countries. We also had political tensions in Ethiopia, economic downturn in Malawi and Tanzania, and drought in Ethiopia that affected a bit of the implementation of the project. Next slide, please. As far as the target beneficiaries were concerned, the ultimate target of the project is rural poor women, men, youth, smallholder families, and rural entrepreneurs that rely on SACCOs. We also had a target for the Apex Federation organizations and official agencies, regulators, policymakers that support them. The secondary target group is was mainly the rural SACCOs and SACCOs with the rural outreach in general. So in Ethiopia, we had two federations, that is in Addis and Amhara, with 44 unions of about 400,000 individual members. In Tanzania, with the SCALT, which is the Savings Credit Cooperative Union of Tanzania, we had 112 SACCOs with over 160 members. And in Malawi, with the MUSCO, the Apex organization in Malawi, that stands for Malawi Union of Savings and Credit Cooperatives, we had a membership of over 160,000 as well. And I will let my colleagues talk more into the actual respective country context later on during the presentation. Next slide, please. When it comes to the objectives of the project, the overall goal was to improve the rural financial inclusion in selected countries of Eastern and Southern African region, that is Ethiopia, Tanzania, and Malawi, through strengthened financial cooperative networks. And this was achieved through three outcomes in the project, that is financial cooperative capacity and human resources was strengthened. Innovative and improved quality of products and services promoted, contributing to improved access to and the use of services in financial cooperatives for poor people living in rural areas. And thirdly, financial cooperative policy and regulation at government level was promoted as well. Next slide, please. A baseline survey was conducted ahead of the project implementation that revealed generally that there had been a good annual economic growth of between 5 to 7% in the three countries at the start of the project. And the bulk of 75% of the population in these countries being rural, hence the centrality of the agricultural cooperatives. The cooperatives were well promoted generally in Ethiopia and Malawi, unlike in Tanzania, where the apex organizations cult had become more relevant. However, rural financial access remained poor at below 35%, and COPs had poor membership and glaring management weaknesses. Next slide. So the project was quite a great benefit, yeah, and when it comes to some of the key messages and key lessons learned, I would say that we have witnessed that Africa is ready for rural financial inclusion, irrespective of the current status, as witnessed by the outcomes of this project. Investing in appropriate policies and sensitization of policymakers is critical to the success of financial inclusion services. And also, SACCO growth can easily be politicized, as seen in the case of Tanzania and many other countries across the region, making it very difficult for the revival of national movements. Disaster preparedness is definitely vital, as seen in the case of COVID-19 interruptions, which slowed a number of activities toward the end of the project implementation. Mobilization of diverse stakeholders involved in SACCO activities for engaging in growing the SACCOs and sensitizing the policies and products is key success for the rural financial inclusion. And the vast countries such as Ethiopia, for example, and Tanzania, they require a lot of innovation in the rollout of products. We witness in this project that countries such as Ethiopia, as I said again, and Tanzania had quite of a challenge in rolling out their central finance facilities. And then the engagement with the private sector is also crucial for rural financial inclusion, as seen in Malawi's case, who engaged 2 mobile phone operators to work with the SACCOs. And then previous experience, and importantly, previous experience with SACCOs and the regulatory entities becomes a key asset in this kind of projects. And hence, the strategic choice of working with the Cooperative Development Foundation of Canada, CDF, which has extensive experience in the cooperatives and SACCO development. This made it very easy, for example, for SCALT in Tanzania to become, for the revival of the apex organization in Tanzania, SCALT. And in Ethiopia, the use of local consultants was also pivotal in getting the many knowledge products rolled out. The use of a combination of strategies provides for successful implementation. Awareness raising among SACCOs went hand in hand with policy influencing and product development. And then lastly here, but not least, exposure visits online platforms such as the ones provided by ACOSCA are quite pivotal mechanism of learning, which can effectively change attitudes and provide for innovations. Next slide, please. On the project relevance across the 3 countries, the project was found relevant to the national growth strategies, cooperative policies, and financial inclusion priorities. For example, in the case of Ethiopia, we have Ethiopia's Growth and Transformation Plan of 2015-2016 to 2019-2020. We also have the Ethiopia National Financial Inclusion Strategy of 2017 and the Federal Cooperative Agency Roadmap for SACCOs. In Malawi, we have the Malawi National Agriculture Policy, and in Tanzania, we have the Tanzania National Financial Inclusion Framework of 2018-2022. And this explains the good support provided to the project by the government and the social and the SACCO officials, which made it very easy for us to be able to implement most of these activities. Next slide, please. In terms of linkages, in each country, the project links very well with IFAD funded initiatives. For example, in Tanzania, we have the MIVAP, which is the Marketing Infrastructure Value Addition and Rural Project. that supported the SACCO sector, including supporting the apex organizations called to come up with governance structure to address the rural outreach issue. In Malawi, the Village Savings and Loan Associations SACCO strategy developed by a consultant on the project, IRFITCO, is being used in the FAMSE project that Moscow is part of in the 8 districts across the country to ensure that rural communities graduate from the informal to the formal financial services. And FAMSE stands for the Financial Access for Rural Markets, Smallholders and Enterprise Program. It's a IFAD funded project. And in Ethiopia, there are consistent linkages, particularly with the IFAD project, the Rural Financial Intermediation Program, ROFIP. This was achieved primarily through the regulation and federation channels. The program worked successfully with the Federal Cooperative Agency to adopt tiered regulation and supervision for improving the financial safety and soundness of the SACCO movement. Next slide, please. The key takeaways identified from the project include and are not limited to, for example, the project succeeded in terms of strengthening the apex bodies and rural circles, development, and in the same case, a rollout of innovative products, mobilization and changes in policy, as well as knowledge management. Challenges came about in terms of the, the occasion towards the last year of the project implementation because of the COVID-19 restrictions. And the vastness of countries like Ethiopia and Tanzania, hence, slowing down the product rollout and slow progress of reviving apex bodies due to internal divisions, as in the case of Tanzania. So this calls for the need to be innovative when engaging with the many stakeholders in this kind of projects. The program was successful on numerous fronts, as well as it facilitated substantial reform, revitalization, and structural changes within this apex organization. And the main major legacy of the program in particular is the expertise accrued, technical notes and training programs that are available for broader utilization on the continent. Next slide, please. So key areas identified in terms of future collaboration include ACOSCA's Knowledge Hub as a Pan-African movement, which is in progress and in development, and also the South-South Technical Assistance. For the case of Ethiopia, there is a need to provide a startup of co-funding arrangement for the emerging federations, including taking advantage of the feasibility studies that have already been conducted. And then in the case of Tanzania, of course, a lot of efforts have already been put into place, in the revival of the SCALT, the apex organization in Tanzania, including getting all the policies in place. And this should actually not be left to waste. SCALT is still in need of financial support to become stable as they work towards the growth of members. So the SCALT requires management information system that is lacking, and this fell short of the project because of the lack of funds. This would become more would help the organization to become more efficient and effective in terms of data management and knowledge management as well. In the case of Malawi, future possible projects of similar nature should start to nurture and sustain the innovations while placing the significant emphasis on capacity building, policy dialogue, and marketing and cooperative model. Additionally, pandemic impact aside, there is need for continued cross-learning amongst the countries so that gains made under the project should benefit the entire cooperative sector and in the participating countries by ensuring that supporting structures in rural areas which host agriculture cooperatives are linked to the financial cooperatives for sustainability of the sector. And with that, I will pave way for my colleagues to go into the specific country context on the impacts and milestones achieved. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jane.
Jane. Thank you for that wonderful brief, but very loaded summary of the journey. that the project has undergone, particularly from the baseline to where we are, the linkages that you shared, and possibly areas of collaboration. So with that, we want to take it a notch higher and invite Isabel Kidney, project coordinator, who handled the Ethiopia piece. Isabel is, very briefly, as a way of introduction, she started a career in Southern Ethiopia, managing savings and credit cooperatives for women entrepreneurs, and subsequently worked as a technical advisor, supporting the development and transformation of microfinance organizations and savings and credit cooperatives movements. So in her career, she has also produced country diagnostic reports, impact assessments, evaluations, roadmaps, technical notes, and so on and so forth, paving way to her session today on milestones achieved and the project outcomes. So over to you, Isabel.
Great, thank you very much, Grace. Just moving on to the next slide, please. Thank you. Just to provide a very small bit of global context, the SACCO, or the credit union movement worldwide, has an estimated 291 million members. This is across 118 countries, and the countries that are highlighted here in a darker green are countries that have national apex bodies. Many of those are affiliated with the World Organization of Credit Unions, WACU. So I just wanted to highlight that it is globally a very large movement. These apex bodies are very instrumental in maintaining the relevance of services that credit unions or SACCOs provide to their members, and also in the sustainability of movements, both at the SACCO level, but also at the national and also at the regulatory level, as the apex organizations are often the interface between the SACCOs and the regulator. So moving on to the next slide, just to give a small perspective on Ethiopia, which the Irish League of Credit Unions Foundation was focusing mainly on the Ethiopia programme, although there were very good linkages with the other programmes, as hopefully will become apparent over the course of this webinar. In Ethiopia, there are over 5 million members of SACCOs. And as you saw on the previous slide, most countries that have significant credit or SACCO movements, they have their own apex body, and the apex bodies typically deliver training. They'll house a central financing facility, pooling excess liquidity so that SACCOs that require additional money for on lending to their members can access that at a cheap rate. They may provide a standard core banking system. They will be an advocacy platform, and so on. Ethiopia is at a stage, really, it's such a large movement. In fact, I think it's the second largest movement in Africa. And it really requires this, what we refer to in Ethiopia as federation or apex level institution, to ensure the sustainability and the growth and thriving of the movement there. I also just want to mention that across Africa, there are an estimated 37 million credit union members or SACCO members. So already this is a very significant component of the individual country level financial landscape, but also particularly across Africa, that they're an important constituency and very often to be found in rural areas, and of course inculcating democratic ownership of their local institutions and so on. So we think it's a great development model, obviously. Just in the next slide, please. So in Ethiopia, with a view to developing a federation structure or an APEC structure, the intention over the project was to establish 2 regional federations. One federation has been established in Amhara, which is predominantly a rural constituency in terms of the SACCOs, and the second federation is in Addis Ababa. We anticipate that Addis Ababa will become the national federation, so that you know, things like capacity building initiatives and so on, and training and marketing services, that that there will be a central point where they are developed, and that there will be a linkage, obviously, with the regional federations. You'll also see Amhara is north, just in the south there. The SNMPO, or the Southern Nationalities Peoples Region, they have started the process of establishing a federation in their region as well. And, you know, whereas in Ireland, you know, with a smaller population of, you know, close to 5 million, we have one apex body. In these regions very often have, you know, multiples of that. So it's appropriate that they have their regional and then linked national federation. Next slide, please. So, so this presentation, apologies, I should have highlighted this at the start. It's covering the milestones and also the outcomes for the 3 countries. And just in relation to the federations and the establishment process, as you can see there, I won't go through them individually, but there was quite a substantial preliminary work that was undertaken in order to establish the federations, and we have the 2 registered now. Next slide, please. So in relation to the kind of key milestones for Tanzania, the target was the revival of the national apex, and within that, the development of a sustainability strategy, and also that the apex would be able to have a membership of 150 SACCOs. So next slide, please. The outcomes were very substantial and very impressive. They had a new board, completely new board, and new management that was put in place for SCULT. There were a number of key operational policies that were developed and put in place, including central financing facility and their risk management approach. They started to offer services such as education and training, and the central financing facility to the membership base as well. Next slide, please. They were a very active advocacy platform, particularly in the area of, obviously, regulation and developments on that front. And their membership of SACCOs grew. I think it's a testament to the confidence that was engendered for SCULT over the period of the programme, from 43 SACCOs to 112 SACCOs. The skills levels of the SACCOs themselves, the SCULT board and the staff were also improved through intensive mentoring and training. And this was very beneficial for the new governance entity, and in the context of an overhauled and new governance structure. Next slide, please. The major milestones in relation to Malawi, they produced a very comprehensive strategic development plan. They also developed 8 training manuals and technical papers. They were successful in getting a number of SACCOs to onboard digital financial services. It's an area we'll go into a little bit more. And they also established regional marketing committees, which is, of course, the promotional aspect is very important. I think very interestingly as well, they developed village savings and lendings associations, the VSLAs. They are very small, usually rural groups, often of women, and it's very close to an informal structure, but it's starting people on the ladder of financial inclusion. And at that basic level, Musco developed an interesting linkage strategy. And I think VSLAs are very widespread across Africa. And probably if you added, you know, the SACCO membership across Africa and the VSLA membership across Africa, you'd have a hugely substantial figure. So that strategy, I think, is very relevant to a lot of countries. And the skills levels within the SACCO movement were also augmented through training. There was a substantial amount of work done on the review of the regulation and the acts, and we'll tell you a little bit more about that under regulation. Thank you. Next slide, please. Musco institutionalized an annual organizational assessment process, and this has been very helpful in being kind of the basis for their strategic plan, and informing their strategic plan, also progress against their strategic plan. And these are the type of tools and instruments, it's an example of the types of tools and instruments that are shared amongst the countries. And we benefit from a lot of economies of scale just in that respect and other respects. Next slide, please. So on financial services, next slide, please. Starting with Ethiopia, which is quasi home territory for ILCAF. We started, and I think this was common across a lot of areas that we were involved in. We started with either, you know, an assessment. In some cases, we had previously deep familiarity with a particular area, and we would do an update of an assessment of an area like regulation supervision, or we would delve a bit more deeply and generate fresh research on a particular area of relevance to the programme. So we started the financial services part of the programme with some deep research into the challenges and drawing from that and consultation workshops, proposed interventions or areas that we would focus on. And there was quite an elaborate number of findings, but you know, the core ones were that the SACCO staff are insufficiently skilled in the area of financial services. So very often matching the finance outside of, say, an agricultural loan, the balloon payment, the ability of the SACCO staff to craft the financial services to match the investment cycles and the business cycles and so on of the membership, that whole area, the skills levels were quite low. A recurrent issue that we hear and have heard over and over the years is the issue of portfolio funding and the fact that the loan sizes are small, and that makes it challenging for the members to build their way out of poverty. In some areas, there was an image and a trust issue with SACCOs, and there's concerns around record keeping and management information systems. Interestingly, a top priority that emerged from that was strengthened regulation and supervision, which was a slightly surprising outcome, surprising but not surprising. I think for brand strength, obviously, trust and financial safety and soundness are the foundations. So so I think that's where that top recommendation came from. There was also a number of recommendations around capacity building, particularly of SACCOs and the obviously personnel. And there was a lot of ideas around financial linkages internally within the SACCO movement, and then financial linkages externally with insurance providers or other maybe banks and so on. And this was just a kind of a steps in relation to the final recommendation. There was a suggestion to improve the financial products and the delivery methodology. With that, we developed a training set on financial product development and have delivered that. So the two main areas that we focused on, in addition to the development of financial services and the introduction of new financial services, was the focus on the central financing facility, as well as on digital financial services. Next slide, please. So just in relation to the central financing facility, and this is one of the initiatives that you will see across the three countries. We developed very detailed operational guidelines for the central financing facility. We provided training and mentoring both to Amhara and Addis Ababa federations on central financing facilities. And we also drew quite substantially on the experience in Malawi and in Tanzania in terms of both the structure of the central financing facility, the oversight of a central financing facility, and the operations, because to some extent that's at the core of an apex, and if the central financing facility goes wrong or is not overseen properly, it can lead to substantial issues. So we were paid particular attention to that particular one. Also the fact that it's an instrument that is so hugely potentially beneficial to rural members and their access to loans. Next slide, please. In Ethiopia, the Amhara Federation, for example, has raised over $500,000 both in capital and also to have available as a portfolio as a central financing facility for on-lending to rural SACCOs. They're operationalizing their central financing facility at the moment. Yeah, that's in place, and that would then become a model for the other regional federations in Ethiopia. Next slide, please. On digital financial services, we have what we call a kind of a honeycomb ranking of digital financial services, and these were based on market assessment, digital financial services market assessments that were conducted. And I think that this whole area, certainly in Ethiopia, came on stream maybe in the last 18 months of the program, and that may be one of the reasons why it didn't take off to the same extent as other program elements. But as you can see, it's a sort of traffic light ranking. So if the honeycomb piece is green, everything's reasonably fine in that area. If it's yellow, it's still under development or underdeveloped, and then if it's red, there are problematic issues in this area. And as we found in Ethiopia, particularly in rural areas, the customers or the members, there were particular challenges at that level in utilizing and accessing and utilizing digital financial services. Digital financial service literacy is quite low. Mobile phone ownership is relatively low, and so on. Next slide, please. So in addition to the starting point was the market assessment. There were 2 pilot initiatives that were undertaken last year, one in Addis Ababa and one in a remote area in SNMPR. I think the expression we use is they didn't grow legs. I think they didn't take off, and I guess, you know, operating from a distance and just the impediments with COVID were severe limitations. However, there were some very relevant learnings from those linkage initiatives, including the how-to and the establishment of linkages with digital financial service providers, understanding that market better. Training materials were developed. Next slide, please. I think, thank you, maybe you pop the points up. Also, you know, if there was a further iteration or the next stage, just ideas around how to grow up from the pilot more rapidly and more successfully. Thank you. Next slide, please. In relation to Tanzania, they also conducted research on the possibility of digital financial services through SACCOs. This was successful. However, there was only a small percentage were able to provide this. And very often the apex body is the entity that can help to cultivate those linkages, and a good management information system and platform and so on would have been useful as well. So so the MIS in SCULT perhaps in the next phase could help to support this. Next, please. Some similarities that you would see in Tanzania, they reconstituted the central financing facility policy products. This was approved by the regulator. They produced a technical note, which was very useful to us in Ethiopia, and they launched this central financing facility. Next slide, please. They similarly have a committee established to manage the fund, and it is operational at the moment. Next slide, please. In Malawi, it's a smaller catchment, and that they have 9 SACCOs have adopted mobile money services. Which is a substantial number of SACCOs in the Malawi context. Also, 91,000 individuals have accessed financial services through the village savings and lendings associations. These are referred to now as, through the linkage mechanism that they have developed, as pre-SACCO groups. They have increased the skills of their SACCO leaders, and they've also introduced youth saving programs. So there's a lot from the Malawi financial services for cross-learning. Next slide, please. Just some photos of VSLA member and also a farmer. Thank you. Next slide, please. So the final area, just in relation to milestones that I'll cover, next slide, please, is the introduction of, or the area of regulation and supervision. And this is probably a good and succinct example of the types of strategies that the program adopted, from the assessment to the building of perspectives with the relevant stakeholders, the development of a draft directive for SACCOs, previously absent in the case of Ethiopia, through to the development of supervisory handbooks to make kind of practical application part of our offering, I guess. And then a considerable amount of consultation on the documents that were produced, including the supervisory handbooks and the directive. And then finally, we are very happy to announce that this also resulted in the ratification of a SACCO Prudential Inspections Directive by the Federal Cooperative Agency. And you'll just see the heading of it just there. So we're very pleased and very encouraged by the enormous amount of work that was undertaken by the Federal Cooperative Agency as well to bring this about, and also their consultative approach. Next slide, please. The outcomes for Ethiopia also include that they're looking at setting up a SACCO supervision unit, and they're looking at rolling out on-site and off-site prudential regulation and supervision. Next slide, please. In Tanzania, on the milestones, there was a considerable amount of work done in relation to the new Microfinance Act for SACCOs, which also encompasses, well, obviously encompasses SACCOs as well as microfinance organizations and institutions, including as a result of this new act, there was a requirement for relicensing of SACCOs, and there was some work done with the regulator in order to make that process smooth for SACCOs. There was a lot of training and skills development of the regulator and their staff, and including via ACOSCA. And the exposure visits, including to Kenya, Ghana, and the Gambia, as well as the participation in the regulators, ACOSCA's Regulators Roundtable, I think really also helped to bring the thinking and the outlook on regulation supervision of SACCOs into a very constructive approach. The program also developed a supervisory handbook and an inspection guide as well. So very substantial progress in Tanzania on regulation supervision. Next slide, please. This is just an indication of the outcomes and the activities which helped to materialize those milestones. I mentioned the extensive training, the supervisory handbooks, the exposure visits, the technical note as well on regulation and supervision, which was also very useful to us in Ethiopia, and the training, the general training for the personnel and the staff for regulation supervision in Tanzania. Next slide, please. On Malawi, there was successful lobbying by the Apex for a tiered approach to SACCO supervision. They are in the process of reviewing the Financial Cooperative Act and the Cooperative Societies Act. And they have produced a regulatory framework manual, and they've also undergone harmonization of the policies at their chapter, at their local levels as well. Next slide, please. They, as VSLAs are formally not SACCOs, they have developed an MOU just to cover this aspect between the Ministry and Reserve Bank of Malawi, so that the VSLAs are considered as incubation entities. There continues to be substantial work on the cooperative policy and also the Cooperative Societies Act. And we expect that there will be continued quite intensive involvement in review of the Financial Cooperatives Act as well. The bylaws of MUSCO had to be revised, and a regulatory framework manual was produced, which helped just the overall guidance. Next slide, please. So just final comment, there was some of in relation to kind of common milestones, we would say that there was very substantial developments in regulation supervision. The targets in relation to Apex establishment, revival and development were met. We're at an introductory phase with digital financial services. The central financing facilities we feel are well structured and really in a position to meet the loan requirements of our rural constituencies. There are some linkages we feel they could be expanded in relation to incorporating youth and working in a more focused manner on the poor constituencies in rural areas through VSLAs, for example. We also have a suite of widely applicable technical notes and training materials which are being hosted by ACOSCA, and we feel that the milestones were really aided through cross-learning. The linkage of the regulators with other regulators across the continent, we really feel has helped also to engender a kind of a common sense, a common perspective on best practice and good practice, and developing the safety and soundness of their respective movements. So I think that's it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Isabel. Thank you for that elaborate and quite detailed journey on the milestones that have been covered. Particularly, you addressing the strengthening aspect of the national associations, because we believe that national associations play a very pivotal role in terms of advocacy and in terms of just having that collective lobbying voice in governments across Africa. Issues to do with capacity building have also come out very strongly, particularly for staff, and the issue of innovative products and services to support the less banked, and finally the regulatory aspect. So thank you so much, Isabel, for that detailed presentation. We now move to impact, and I would just want to introduce the gentleman coming up now, Mr. Leroy Banda. Leroy is currently the head cooperatives development and projects for Malawi Union of Savings and Credit Cooperatives, otherwise known as MUSCO, which is the national umbrella body for SACCOs in Malawi. He has coordinated IRFITCO project activities in Malawi in very close consultation with CDF country representative there. He has a strong bias in business development, capacity assessments, rural financial outreach approaches, and project implementation. So over to you, Leroy. He will be covering the impact across the various countries as far as the project is concerned. Leroy. Leroy, are you there? I seem to have missed Leroy. I believe it's a technical problem from that end. Constance, would you want to jump in?
Grace, Grace, Leroy is failing to unmute himself. Is he muted central?
Okay.
You want to try to unmute him from that side?
Okay, let me see if I can do that.
Okay, so Grace, he's coming to my office. He will start presenting just now.
Thank you. Okay.
Grace,
Yes, I can hear you loud and clear.
Okay, fine. So Leroy is with me now, so you can proceed.
Grace, this is Ben. Maybe we want to answer some of the question in the chat box too at one point.
Yes, we've reserved that to the next session after Constance.
Good.
If Leroy is ready, but if he's not, maybe we could take a question or two.
I am ready. Actually, I've moved to Fumbani's office now. I was failing to unmute from the other end.
Okay.
So I will be presenting on the impact of the project in the three countries, Malawi, Tanzania, and Ethiopia. So the slide that you are seeing there is statistics for Malawi. We have currently 40 circles that are registered and licensed. The case of Malawi is that the statistics that we capture are only for those circles that are licensed. But there are more circles that are in the process of being formed. We do not capture that, but we recognize them as our initiatives in terms of the developing the circles. So you will see there that the total assets are standing at 39 million USD, or close to 40 million. Next slide. Next slide, please. Tanzania, that is the status, 4,115 circles, and the total assets of the movement in Tanzania is 681 million Kenya shillings. Tanzania is a bigger country than Malawi. I would be approximating around Tanzania could be 7 times Malawi size, and Ethiopia could be around 6 or 5 times Malawi. Next slide, please. The Ethiopia movement, like you heard from my colleague Isabel when she was presenting, it's a vast country, and there are circles in Ethiopia, but the regional apex organizations, the unions, were not so strong, and this particular project came in to strengthen the union. So as Isabel was presenting, we have at least now 2 that are up and running. Looking at the number of circles, in Ethiopia, we have 21,328 circles, and the total assets of the entire movement is 165 million USD. Next slide, please. So what I was presenting was just to give you a picture of the financial cooperative sector in the 3 countries. Now, the slide that you're viewing now is presenting an upper level impact as a result of the IFAD project. So what we have seen, and it has been registered as a success and an impact, is that now we have new apexes in Tanzania and Ethiopia. Before the project, there were no apexes in the two countries. While in Malawi, the apex was there, but as an impact, what we have seen now is that the apex has become more strong. Issues of lobbying for the sector, developing some strategies, we'll be speaking to those, and my colleague Isabel earlier on also talked to the same. We also saw that in the three countries, there was improved access to financial services. For example, rural communities in SACCOs and the VSLAs that we do promote in the three countries. In Malawi in particular, we are using these as SACCO precursors, where we are grooming rural community members to participate in the financial services sector in the informal setup, but later on, they graduate to, or they are linked to a formal sector through a SACCO. So that is also an impact of this particular project. On technology transfer, this encompasses issues of knowledge, training, capacity building, and also digital financial services, where, like here in Malawi, Isabel also talked about the same. In Ethiopia, a case also in Tanzania, is where we see SACCOs now embracing technology to service their members. And this has become more relevant because, are you able to hear? It seems I've lost my presentation here.
We can hear you.
Right, but I think I lost my presentation, so maybe it's going to that particular slide.
Okay.
Right, and another impact is on the regulation. The regulatory framework in the three countries has been enhanced. That is the upper level impact that we can also report, and in the respective countries, we are reporting on what has been done in that particular area. Now we go to the next slide. The next slide, please.
Yeah.
So the next slide, we have specific areas that we are reporting as impact. I'll start with Malawi. We, through this particular project, developed an incubation roadmap in which we are saying new SACCOs that are being promoted and being formed, before they can be subjected to prudential regulation by the regulator, which is the registrar, which is the governor of the central bank here in Malawi. This should be under the watch of MUSCO and Ministry of Industry and Trade. During that particular period, we are calling it an incubation phase. And then when they develop the capacity, we should be able to recommend them for registration and licensing. So this is speaking to the tiered approach to regulation. In so doing, then this will also assist us to go into rural areas using the SACCO model. The other impact is now we have revised the Financial Cooperative Act. The draft is ready, and later on it will be presented to Cabinet, and then eventually it will go to Parliament for enactment. This is a reflection of the current Financial Cooperative Act, where we saw some gaps. We have also seen in Malawi as an impact increased SACCO membership. When we were starting this particular project, the membership in Malawi was 93,000. Now we are at over 160. So this particular project, with the interventions that we implemented, we've seen an increase in the membership. Youth, inclusion of the youth, that is also an impact where some circles have now a youth savings program, and this is contributing to youth inclusion in the circle sector, leading to financial inclusion. We produced also a CFF technical note, and that has been shared amongst ourselves, and also it is posted on the ACOSCA website where people can be able to access. We developed a VSLA circle linkage strategy. This strategy is speaking to, in Malawi, we have a Malawi National Social Support Program, which has recognized both circles and VSLAs as vehicles for financial inclusion. Building on that, in Malawi, we have developed a VSLA circle linkage, and this is the one that is leading us or assisting us. How do we serve the rural communities that are served by the formal financial players like banks and MFIs? But because circles are rooted in the rural communities, this strategy is there to assist circles to be able to link the VSLs. And the pictures that Isabel showed prior, they are indicating 2 members of VSLAs that have also been linked to one of our community circles. DSF gap analysis, that is another impact. 9 circles are now using the electronic platform to service members, and the gap analysis was done in one of our circles, FinCorp, and FinCorp has created a financial mobile platform where members are able to both pull and push. They can be saved using an electronic platform, and they have created that platform where members are able to use a mobile phone by dialing *327#, and then they are able to access their information. They can deposit, they can also withdraw. We look at this as an impact because going forward, in the face of COVID, I think use of technology will be very handy to bring about convenience, but also to limit use of physical cash, which can also be transporting the virus. We have seen also improved governance in circles through the training sessions that we have conducted with support from this particular project. Now we can see more women coming into the boards. We can see also directors now are being mindful of their roles, not to combine with the roles of management. We have also seen improved reporting by circles because now they are enlightened that it is a regulatory requirement for them to be submitting reports. Another impact is that through this particular project, MUSCO as an apex was supported to develop a 5-year strategic plan. And this particular plan has 5 pillars. One of the pillars that is related to this particular project is what we call inclusive growth, because we realize that 80% of our people live in rural areas, and therefore we need to go rural. The inclusive growth strategy is speaking to how can we tap in rural communities by leveraging on the existing VSLAs, by leveraging on the youth that are maybe are out of school, they are resource constrained, but in terms of potential, they have that particular ability. How can they be part and parcel of the circle movement? So we have seen this particular project contributing to how MUSCO should progress from 2019 to 2023. Issues of innovation, that is also another pillar that we are is in the strategic plan, but also communication and visibility, innovation. This is also speaking to the DFS. So you see that our strategic plan speaks to the national financial inclusion strategy, but also was in line or is in line with the intentions of IFAD as a project. Another impact is that 91,620 individuals now access financial services through the pre-SACCO groups. So we are working with close to 91,620 Malawians, especially on the Farms project in the 8 districts. These are potential SACCO members once we eventually link them to SACCO. So if we were just to say MUSCO's effort to go to the rural, we would include this, but we haven't included it in our statistics I presented earlier on, because these are not yet SACCOs. Risk management, that was conducted and the mitigation measures were developed. So we have now a risk register and we are able to manage our risks. Next slide, please. Tanzania. The impact in Tanzania, the first one is awareness was created for the Microfinance Act for SACCOs, and the country and the people have accepted, and they know now that SACCOs operate in a very regulated environment, and that is bringing confidence. And that is why we have seen the revival of the Apex Scout. Another impact in Tanzania is the exchange visits, the study tours exposed leaders to best practices when they visited countries like Kenya, Ghana. So they are able now to know how to manage the SACCOs from the director's point of view, and then let managers manage. Now they are able now to see that their role is to provide policy direction, management to manage the SACCOs now when they learned from their peers in the countries where they visited. Another impact is there is improved supervision and inspection of SACCOs. We have now in Tanzania 112 SACCOs that are licensed. So these are registered and licensed SACCOs in Tanzania. That is an impact that we can report. You've moved too quickly. I go back to Tanzania. CFF has been rolled out in Tanzania as well to service small SACCOs and rural areas. The Apex has developed a training curriculum, registration and licensing of the Apex to be able to service its members. That is also an impact in Tanzania. Improved governance, just as I talked about it earlier on about in Malawi. And also the Apex is now established with the affiliates, over 100 affiliates, which are SACCOs, 112. This is pointing to sustainability of the Apex in the long run. Now coming to Ethiopia, an impact there, we successfully lobbied with the government for Apex formation, tied regulation, and the sectoral consolidation. That is an impact of this particular project in Ethiopia. Another impact is a prudential and tied regulation has been developed and approved. You see that all across the country, people are looking at regulation should be tied, unlike one size fits all. Linkage has been developed with the DFS provider. CFF was established, and its policy and operational guidelines were also developed as a model for the country on how the central finance facility should be established, should be managed and monitored. A critical loan portfolio financing that also has been addressed, especially in Amhara. So in Ethiopia, an impact there is now the central finance is able now to be resourced by the SACCOs, and then the central finance can be able to lend to SACCOs that are in need. While the SACCOs that have the capacity, they should be looking at the CFF as an investment instrument where they can put their deposits, put their shares there, and then the CFF is providing the financial intermediation role for the sector. In another impact in Tanzania is that now we have 2 apex organizations that have been formed. Looking at the vastness of Ethiopia, there will be more apexes that will be formed based on the region, but so far, this project has successfully established 2 functional apex organizations. Generic training manuals, that is another impact, developed, and the technical resources developed. Another impact is that in Tanzania, not in Tanzania, Ethiopia, a roadmap has been developed for the SACCO movement. So there is a roadmap how the SACCO sector in Ethiopia should be following en route to developing a strong, sustainable SACCO movement. Next slide, please. Now, looking into the future, based on the successes of IFITCO this far, we are proposing the following for the future. We need to finalize pending and draft legislation and policies. Those that are in draft, we need to finalize, and the policies that are in draft, they need to be finalized, and then they need to be approved. Once that is done, we are looking at translation of these policies and regulations into local languages so that a majority of the people understand. Normally, they could be in English or French or whatever, but we are saying they should be translated into local language so that a majority of the people should be able to use these documents. We are also talking of rolling out legislations, policies, and products to rural areas. We need to innovate, continuously innovate as rollout is going on, e.g. the mobile money, the case of what has been done in Ethiopia, even here in Malawi. We need to scale out this particular innovation. We need to strengthen rural circles through the integrated cooperative model. What we mean here is that when we go rural people's livelihood enterprise is agriculture. So we are saying to sustain the circles, to be able to provide financial services, these circles should be anchored by the other types of cooperatives that are on the production side. So we are saying circles should be linked to the producer cooperatives, should be linked to the marketing cooperatives. That will be setting up a complete cooperative model in the rural area that will also be able to enhance financial inclusion. The other future consideration point is that there should be continuous information sharing among the 3 countries, Malawi, Ethiopia, and Tanzania, on what we have been learning together and sharing together. That has to be, that should continue, because we are saying what is working in Malawi can be replicated in Tanzania or modified a bit, as well as in Ethiopia, and likewise, vice versa. Malawi should be able to learn what is happening in Ethiopia, but also learn what is happening in Tanzania, so that we build strong SACCO sector and also strong apexes that can be able to support the sector. Finally, we are saying there should be continued engagement with stakeholders for conducive regulatory environment. So far, so good. We have seen other stakeholders like the ministry and even the central banks in the 3 countries being very responsive and listening to the sector's ideas, all the while making sure that the sector remains a sector that is regulated, but being able to provide the needed financial services. So on the impact, let me stop there for now.
Okay, thank you so much, Leroy. Again, a wonderful presentation taking us through what has happened in the various countries. I just want to move it a bit faster now. So I will briefly just introduce the next presenter, because I've seen a couple of questions coming in, so that we have ample time to address some of the questions that have come in. So our last speaker is, before we get to the questions, is Constance. Constance is currently CDF Canada Program Officer based in Kenya. She supports the implementation of the Voice Project for empowerment of women and girls. But previously she worked through ACOSCA in coordinating this project, which was very instrumental in the revitalization of the National Association of Tanzanian Circles, also known as CALT. His experience, project management professional, having worked in various countries in the East African region. So over to you, Constance.
Thank you, Grace, for that introduction. Good afternoon and good morning, depending on where you are. I will be taking you through the knowledge management initiatives and the access process on the ACOSCA portal. So I hope everyone is able to see the screen. That is appearing on your laptops. So on the knowledge management part, I don't know if you are getting me. I can hear a lot of noise from the background. Hello, Grace.
Please go ahead.
Clear now.
You're clear.
You're clear now.
Okay. Yeah. So I'm taking you through knowledge management documents that were produced during the project implementation. And I want to say that they are in different categories, depending on which kind of documents were supposed to be produced. So initially, when the project began, we are supposed to do assessment of the countries where the projects were being implemented. And the following assessments were produced. So there was assessment of regulatory and policy environment, both in Ethiopia and Tanzania. And Ethiopia managed to come up with the current status of SACCO regulation in Federal Republic of Ethiopia, and also a training needs assessment, together with a curriculum to outline what kind of treatments, trainings are required by various SACCOs in Ethiopia. For Tanzania, we did a regulatory framework status report, which is in place. And the reason for this is in case anybody is coming up with any project about cooperative sector or SACCO sector in those countries, they already have some information in place which they can refer to and which can guide them in their further implementation of the project that will be in place. So the second one was for us to assess prior interventions, which Ethiopia did an analysis of IFAD portfolio programs that were in place in Ethiopia. And both Tanzania and Ethiopia did country diagnostic research report about the two countries, and still on the same about the SACCO status. When I say SACCO, it also means credit union status in those countries. The same with Malawi. They did a SACCO assessment report to show what is the status of the SACCO status in those three countries. So those are the assessments that were done for all the three countries, and the documents are available. Then there are a number of toolkits that were also produced during the project implementation. And these toolkits have really assisted when it came to project progress in those in the three countries where the project was being implemented. So Ethiopia developed a framework for SACCO sustainability. They also did a country level SACCO movement appraisal toolkit. They did Apex Capacity Assessment Toolkit, SACCO Federation Strategic Planning Toolkit, and CFF Operational Guidelines, together with the Operational Guidelines for Federation. So those were the documents produced by Ethiopia when it comes to sustainability for rural circles. In the case of Tanzania, we developed a model board charter for Apex. Of course, this was being done with the national Apex of Tanzania in the mind, but this one is a model where any country that wants to come up with a board charter for any of the boards that will be formed in their national Apex, they can refer to and have their own board charters. The same with the bylaws that were developed for the Apex. And we also put in place a new governance structure, which now includes even the chapters. This means that those regional SACCO networks that were in the whole country doing the same roles that the Apex was supposed to do, they were all brought together under the structure of the Apex. And now the Apex in Tanzania has got a new structure that incorporates all of them. And now the Apex is representing the whole country. We also did a strategic plan for the Apex, and still this one is a model strategic plan that any country that wants to do a strategic plan for the Apex can easily get help through this particular document. So for Malawi, they did a gender toolkit for SACCO in that area. And then we also had financial product development toolkits, which in Tanzania, we did the CFF policy. Malawi, they did, just a minute. Yeah, Ethiopia, they did Ethiopia, they did a financial produce development toolkit, which was revised, and a training package. Tanzania, we did a CFF policy. Just a minute. Yeah.
Constance, could you pick a question as you're
Yes,
winding
please.
up, or you're okay?
Yeah, you can go ahead and pick a question as I sort out the issue of this screen.
Okay. Okay, thanks, Constance. As Constance is trying to resolve the technical issue, maybe I could pose a question here on behalf of Chrissy. And Christy is asking, among the learning tools produced, which ones do we prioritize for adding value in the future? The question goes to CDF. Jen, would you want to take this?
Yes, sure, Grace. Thank you very much. And thank you, Chrissy, for asking that question. That's a very important question. I would say the tools that were produced or all add value to the future of cooperative movement in Africa and also other continents. Firstly, I would cite the Central Financial Facility Operational Guidelines that were produced. The CFF is an interlending and investment facility for savings and credit cooperatives. And it's usually established by SACCO's National Association. And it acts as a centralized treasury for SACCOs where they can invest and earn from their saving deposits and also get assured to loans to finance their excess loan and member withdrawal demands. In our case, and as per the experience of the IFAD project, dimensions to cover this technical note was informed by an assignment to redesign and restructure the CFF of Malawi, Savings and Credit Cooperatives, that is MOSCO, and it was sponsored by CDF under this project of improving financial rural finance through cooperatives. The note was aimed at giving guidance on the CFF best practices and how it can also improve financial access through cooperatives. And for the purposes of accountability and reporting, the CFF needs to own independent accounting that is separate from the regular accounting of the Apex organization or any cooperative or SACCO. And from this accounting, because it assures timely preparation of accounts and promote reporting, decision making, and also equally an independent ICT system, and enables the CFF to extend to members on value addition and services to access the national payment system, mobile banking, ATM services, and others. So a well-managed CFF is profitable business capable of paying its own expenses and support the development budget of the National Association without necessarily interfering with the members' funds. That's why the CFF is very important. And it plays a critical role in SACCO sector as it provides the liquidity needed by the SACCOs to extend and expand credit to their members. And it also provides an in-house avenue for SACCOs to invest their surplus funds and competitive rates. And it requires regulation and supervision in order to bring confidence, stability, and growth to the fund and the SACCO sector. So I would place CFF as first on the list, but of course, followed by the rest of the tools that are also quite critical to the advancement of the cooperative movement within Africa and other continents. And the good thing is that we have all these tools stored up with ACOSCA, and they can be accessed for replication in other country contexts that are not necessarily the ones that we worked on. Thank you very much. I hope I answered your question. Over to you, Grace.
Yes, thank you, Jen. I hope that is covered. Christy, if you have a follow-up question, kindly just post it on the chat box and we can advance that conversation. Connie, back to you, or I take one more?
No, I can go now.
Okay,
I hope
over to
everyone
you
is able
then.
to see the screen.
Yes.
Yes,
Please proceed.
I will take that again. So I was saying on the financial product development toolkit, Tanzania, we produced a CFF policy. So the other category of documents that were produced were DFS and insurance documents, whereby Ethiopia produced a document on market assessments for SACCOs in Ethiopia. They also did a PowerPoint presentation, which was titled Becoming Mobile Money Agent. And also they did a DFS pilot assessment. On insurance, Ethiopia did a research on SACCO financial services. And in Tanzania, we did a risk management policy for the Apex and a risk management policy framework for SACCOs. So the other category was network organization monitoring for RUSACOs. RUSACOs mean rural SACCOs, safety and soundness. Ethiopia did a number of documents. They did an inspection support manual for SACCOs. They also did a draft on regulatory drive for SACCOs in Ethiopia. Also a brief strategy for Vision 2030 for RUSACOs in the same country. And they did a training program for, which was generic for federation development, which has 5 thematic areas with 4 modules in each area. As for Tanzania, we developed a SACCO inspection manual for regulators and a supervisory handbook for regulators to use in the country when they go to the field to do their job. So on the other category of technical notes which were developed, a number of them were developed during the project implementation. We have Ethiopia did a technical note on core banking for SACCOs. They also did a technical note on financial literacy. I remember this technical note was developed during one of the ACOSCA forums that took place in Ghana, and it included participants from the 3 countries, that is Malawi, Tanzania, and Ethiopia. So it was a collaboration between the 3 countries to come up with this particular technical note. And in the part of Tanzania, we did a technical note on supervision and regulation. And of course, this was to guide any country in Africa that wants to understand why supervision of SACCOs and regulation. Malawi, finally, they did a technical note on CFF. So we just want to say that the development of these knowledge management documents was done in collaboration of the 3 countries, and is for the benefit of many other African countries that are still struggling with the cooperative movement that is not stable in those various countries. And we really want to thank IFAD for the support that they gave towards the development of these particular documents, although they are hosted on a COSCA website and through a knowledge management portal. Any African countries coming to a COSCA can easily access the documents, and they can be of great help to those countries that require them. So for now, the ACOSCA website is open, and anybody who wants to see these documents that were developed in details, they can be able to access just through ACOSCA website. Then you click on knowledge management portal, and thereafter you will see a number of categories, either governance documents, regulation documents, risk documents, and financial product documents. Then a number of them will appear under any category, so you can be able to read them through. But later on, the website will have limited access. So unless one wants to access these materials, they have to come to ACOSCA and seek for either password or access through the laid down procedures. So, as I said, we are grateful, and we remain hopeful that these materials developed will benefit many SACCOs, not only in Africa, but any country that is struggling to either form an apex, to come up with financial products, documents. They can always refer to them, and they will be of great help. I wish to stop there and hand over to Grace.
Okay, thank you so much, Connie, for yet another elaborate presentation from you. And from the rest of the speakers who've gone before you, I want to open it up for questions now. And we have just about 6 minutes to cover all the questions. So we will try and make it as brief as possible. And to manage time, I will ask the questions on behalf of our participants. So I would like to start with Chima. Chima asks, can you share with us a case story of a rural farmer in one or each country positively affected by the project? I'll ask Leroy to take this, and maybe it could be just an example from one of the countries. Leroy, are you ready?
Yes, I am. Yes, I am, Grace. Can I proceed?
Yes, please.
Right. There are several stories that we can share as case stories or success stories, but we'll just give one from two from Malawi, and we can summarize some of the case stories, and then we share with CDF. The CDF can share with the participants that are here. Using the strategy of linking VSLs, we have a story of one farmer, a woman, Mrs. Tokozani Mpaha, those are Malawian names. She's a member of a VSLA. Eventually, she was linked to one of our rural circles, and she's doing an on-farm and off-farm business. So she's able to produce vegetables, tomatoes, and stuff like that. And then she sells on wholesale, but also she runs a small hawker in her rural village. That is a success story where she is able to say, in a year, she's able to make from her VSL and the businesses, 500,000 Malawi kwacha, which is a solid impact on the livelihood of that particular household, especially because she's a woman, and we know that all that money is going to this particular family. And the second one, let me be quick, is another gentleman who is also linked to one of our other circles. This guy is in also agriculture, and he's part and parcel of a project also funded by IFAD called FAMZE, the one that Jen earlier on introduced. And this farmer is a member of a VSLA. Now he is also linked to a circle. And you can see there the collaboration or the linkage between FAMZE and IRFITCO. Let me stop there, but there are several stories that we can pick from Ethiopia and Tanzania.
Okay. Thank you very much, Leroy. There's a question here on climate change. And Hajra Atik asks, climate change is crucial in rural agriculture and agribusiness. Was this an issue in the project? I would want to ask Isabel to take that.
Great.
Isabel.
Yeah, thank you very much. Yes, this is a very significant issue. We attempt, for example, through the financial product development work to promote the diversification of loan portfolios so that they're not overly concentrated in one area or one crop, for example. However, we feel that there can be a preparatory phase part to SACCOs being able to weather climate change events, and also a response side as well. On the preparatory side, we feel that there should be loan protection insurance in place for members so that if there is some catastrophe, particularly at the household level, that maybe that loan amount can be written off, or that they have a link to an insurance which can also provide some protection. Also, if a crisis hits, that possibly the services that the SACCO provides, they might be recalibrated a little bit. Things like emergency loans or maybe rescheduling of loans and so on might be undertaken. We also feel, though, more broadly that there should be some instruments in place for the movement, such as things like deposit guarantees in the event of a SACCO collapsing, or a stabilization fund in the event of a SACCO going through severe financial distress as a result of a crisis or a climatic event. And there are other mechanisms at the government level. So we feel that climate change is very significant, and it needs to be addressed at both the member, the SACCO, the movement, and the regulatory level as well.
Thank you, Isabel. I believe you've covered Harji's questions well. There is a follow-up question directly to Ilkov. I would like you to take this as well, Isabel, in a minute, sure, if that's okay.
Yeah.
It's in regards to your experience creating and working with federations. And what is the best policy choice for creating an enabling environment for apex bodies? Do you have a comment on that?
Sure. Yeah, I guess the first thing is there needs to be the regulatory space for the apex in the cooperative the cooperative law. There also, of course, needs to be at a policy level. The government needs to be interested in supporting an apex, and in Ethiopia, the SACCO movement has been really driven by the government, but they're very keen and interested to see greater independence of the movement, that's something that, of course, is necessary if the federation or the apex is going to thrive. So there's a lot of small things where, you know, microfinance and commercial banks dominate the financial inclusion agenda. I'll probably say maybe at a policy level that really apex organizations, SACCOs, international organizations really need to make sure that SACCOs are also part of the discourse on financial inclusion. I have a bit more to say, but I know time is very limited, so I'll leave it there for the moment.
Thank you, Isabel. So I'll take two last questions because of time, and I would kindly request the people involved to be as brief as possible. This I will ask Ademba to answer. Why Kenya is successful enough than other project implementation countries? Please, Ademba. You can unmute.
Sorry. First, a SACCO is a saving and a credit institution. In Kenya, we have good schemes for savings, and we have good schemes for loan repayment. Once you succeed in savings mobilization and you are good in loan repayment, your SACCO will be successful. Number two, we have very good recruitment drives for SACCO members. Like if you're a teacher, you're employed from month one, the teacher's SACCO will get you on board. So you will find that if you're a police officer, from the time you join the police force, you'll be recruited into the police SACCO. So in other words, almost nearly 99% of Kenyan employees are members of SACCOs. And every company, every government ministry, every government parastatal has a SACCO. So the SACCO culture has grew with Kenyans for a long time. And the last part of it is the legislation. We have also developed our legislation over time, and we have moved to full prudential regulation for the better part of our SACCOs. So most of our SACCOs are prudentially regulated. So regulation brings the confidence and makes people feel that their money is safe, and they can save, and they can save and save and retain their money within the SACCO system. So most of the SACCO funds are retained within the SACCO system. So Grace, the question is so wide, but in 1 minute, I would want to say that we have a good SACCO culture in Kenya. We have good laws in place. And if you're not a member of a SACCO, you are almost considered to be not anywhere. You have to be a SACCO member.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Thank you, Ademba. Thank you for your remarks and your insights. The final question is on gender. I will ask Constance to take this very quickly before I invite the next speaker. What were the gender dynamics of the projects planned and actual outcomes? Question from Tanzania. Connie, in half a minute, please.
Thank you, Grace. I will be very brief. Of course, we all know the project focus was for the rural poor women and youth relying on SACCOs. And what I can say is, even though when we began implementing this project, more focus was given to like the two countries, Ethiopia and Tanzania, reviving the apex and the federations in Ethiopia. Still, when we were doing the capacity building, we did a lot of trainings in terms of leadership. And as a result of this, we saw a lot of women joining the leadership of the circles which they were in. Just for example, alone, the national apex for Tanzania, initially when we came in, it was full of only one gender, that is men. But then by the end of the project, when we were exiting, at least it had acquired a third of the board members as women. And also for the project overall, as a project, we managed to, through the project, to start Africa Women in COP through ACOSCA. And Tanzania launched their chapter. Malawi also launched their chapter. Malawi also launched even the youth agenda that is under MUSCO. So I can say we achieved much in terms of factoring the issue of gender, which is the women which have been left behind when it comes to them coming up in leadership, them coming up in savings or accessing finance. So the progress was good, and we must, I must say, there was a lot that was achieved when it comes to gender balance.
Right, thank you, Connie, and thank you everyone else for those wonderful interactions we've had so far. I would now wish to welcome Sauli Huri, who's the Senior Regional Specialist for Rural Finance Markets and Enterprises, IFAD. Apologies, we've eaten into your time, Sauli. Please bear with us, but hopefully we could hear your reflections in 5 minutes or so. Welcome, Sauli.
Thank you, Grace. Good afternoon, everyone from Nairobi. Here is the afternoon, and pleasure to have had these 2 hours to hear all the good results, even in the quite difficult circumstances now with the COVID and different shocks in the region. To have, you know, that we have at least achieved this through the IRFITCO program. Now, just you know, to reflect a little bit from IFAD point of view, this inclusive rural finance, which is the umbrella topic also for SACCO's development, is a key strategic pillar of IFAD in the Eastern and Southern Africa region. I just have some statistics here. We have ongoing projects of about $200 million of investments in Eastern and Southern Africa, and right now the ongoing ones are 7 projects. You can go, anyone can go to IFAD open websites, can Google, for example, IFAD Kenya or IFAD Uganda or IFAD in another country in ESA, and you will go. If you go then from that website to the projects and programs, you can find the raw finance relevant ones. And there's also new designs coming up, or right now underway, a number of countries in this same, and including SACCO investments and SACCO support initiatives. So this continues to be a key strategic topic for IFAD, not only the rural finance, but also SACCOs in itself. And we also have a new rural finance policy, or inclusive rural finance policy now at IFAD, just adopted last week, actually, after 12 years, and it restates the importance of rural finance, and also you know, allocates more resources to this work in the future. Now I need to be brief, so let me just go straight to the point. You know, there are many projects and programs in IFAD that have resources, and you know, mostly through government loans. So we make a loan to government then makes support measures to SACCO sector, including sometimes technical assistance, many times resource allocation, so credit lines or credit guarantees towards SACCO's space to do then whatever is strategically required at the moment. Sometimes it's climate finance these days, sometimes it is inclusive finance and poverty reduction and agriculture development mostly. Now, in order to do that efficiently, we need this type of partnership arrangements like we've had in this one. So thank you so much for ACOSCA, CDF, and ILCUF for implementing this program, and we hope to seek opportunities for continuation of this type of technical partnerships. We need to be a little bit more strategic, and then because IRFITCO was even I know that we had built those links with the programs, and partly it was successful, partly not always successful. So we need to be sure that from the beginning, when we start this kind of TA partnerships in the IFAD context, I mean, obviously, if you do other programs, not to do with IFAD loan programs, but when we do with let's say IFAD partnership projects, then we would need to link them more, directly to the ongoing resources that are going through governments to SACCO sector. So if there are loans or guarantees or some kind of an instrument that is going to the SACCO sector, then the TA would be nice if it was aligned so that those SACCOs who are receiving the resources, then they would also receive TA through this type of partnership, or the enabling environment in that case, for example, the host unit of the type of resource base or whoever, then they would receive support. So I think in the future, let's try and align into that direction. About the guidance materials toolkit, I acknowledge that it is now being published at the ACOSCA website. I just very quickly, during listening to the show, I also went to the ACOSCA website and I opened some of those materials. It would be good if we would have a kind of a uniform approach, that we could have all those materials published in a uniform format in the standard quality, let's say, to see the way that it is, and then we could so that we could use it almost like a standard toolkit, kind of a how-to-do note or something for the SACCO sector development. If we could refine them a little bit, I think it's quite a light touch work, just to revise the front pages and to ensure that the quality inside is roughly going to the same direction. I think that would be a very good starting point to start imagining, envisioning, and developing new partnership in the various in the countries of targeted now, but also across ESA otherwise. So based on the skills and the toolkits that have been already developed. And on behalf of IFAD, just thank you so much again for all the implementing partners, but also all the audience today. And we had several country directors here today, but I think they had to leave some half an hour ago or so. We had Mawira from Ethiopia country office, and we had Francesco, who is the country director Tanzania, Kenya, Rwanda. So confirm from IFAD side that we appreciate the result and the good work done in this partnership. And we're happy that we could do this project jointly, and look forward to future actions with all of you and others in the Publicum. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Sauli, for those wonderful remarks. We appreciate what IFAD has done and the journey we've walked together. Hopefully, this is a beginning of other collaborations in the future. With that, may I now call on our final speaker, Benuandre, the Executive Director of CDF, to just close for us the meeting. Welcome, Benoit.
Hey, thank you. I have 1 minute, so I'll be very, very brief. Thank you very much to all of you who were involved. I was very impressed by this presentation and the result. Thank you, Jane, Isabel, Jane, Grace, Constance. It was great. Thank you for the support of IFAD. Sauli, thank you very much for your professional support. It was really great. We also appreciate the support of all of our partners, specifically ACOSCA, George Amado. So I could go very long, but I won't, because I have very, very little time. I want to thank you all for all those involved, and I take note that there is real possibility to scale up and to use some of the results, the tools that were used, and to adapt them and to expand them. Specifically, I like this idea to link TA to recipients of funds. So that makes quite a lot of sense to us, and we will reach out later to see how we can provide support there. So again, I don't want to, Here we go. My 1 minute is up. Thank you very much to all.
Okay, thank you. And thank you everyone once again for your time and your active participation today. Not forgetting all the volunteers who are also involved in the project. We say thank you, a big thank you, and the technical team behind the scenes for making this a successful one. So with that, I wish you all a great week ahead, and bye-bye for now.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
you.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Bye-bye.